With spring fast approaching, I'll be dusting off my 3D printer that has been in storage and I'll once again embark on a 3D printing frenzy. I thought I'd put a video together to talk about some of the things I ran into that was not expected. That may help folks new to 3D printing or thinking about getting into the hobby for the first time. This video is based on the perspective of a miniature painter and a tabletop gaming hobbyist, though there is some good information that'll benefit anyone interested in 3D printing. The printer shown and used here is a Phrozen Mighty 8K resin printer, though this video should still benefit users of other brands and types of 3D printers. The first question is it worth it financially? Though prices vary for a very good 3D printer, there is a hefty price tag. When I purchased this Phrozen 8K medium-sized printer, it was nearly 50% off and it still broke my bank. Currently, it's roughly about $650 US on Amazon. With WizKids' miniatures being obtainable at as low as $3 a piece and some Reaper miniatures as low as $6 a piece, you can buy 1 to 200 miniatures for the cost of just the printer. If you plan on churning out tons of miniatures, terrains, and statues, among other things, then yes, this purchase could be worth it in the long run. In my hurry to get to 3D printing, I didn't really do much research on additional costs that may factor into the hobby. So let's start with those. Filament or resin. My printer uses resin and I need lots of resin. Granted, you can print quite a bit with one bottle. You'll always want to keep an extra one on hand to make sure your vat is topped off before starting a new print job. And there may even be times that you may have to fill your vat in the middle of a massive project. The 8K Aqua Gray bottle I like is currently about $45 on Amazon per bottle, and I've printed out roughly 80 miniatures and 2 large busts with just one bottle. A cleaning and curing station. This one is completely optional, but with that said, I had cleaned the largest bust I printed by hand as it would not fit in the small curing station that I had originally purchased. I do not intend to do that ever again, and I immediately bought the larger cleaning station. Yes, you can clean it by hand in a large tub, but when you print back to back to back, hand cleaning all of these is a nightmare. And concerning curing, you could place a new miniature out in the sun, which I also tried before purchasing my first curing and cleaning station. When the clouds had parted enough to let some damn light down, a bird gave me the finger. Yeah, this mutant bird had hands, and then it swooped down to deliver a massive drive-by on one of these miniatures. Just before his buddy the wind scattered the rest of them into the dirt, forcing me to clean them all over again. Yes, they can be cured with the sun, but it adds a layer of time and complexity that I have no interest in contending with, and I don't intend on building a mini greenhouse to cure these things. However, now that I say that, I probably could have just put a large glass jar over them and the problem would have been solved. Regardless, I purchased the Anycubic 2.0, which is roughly $140 on Amazon. But if you get a printer as large as the 8K Mighty from Phrozen or larger and want a curing station, get the largest one you can. If you print anything taller or bigger around than a large can of energy drink, you'll want the jumbo station, which is about $260 US. Isopropyl alcohol. Yes, you can use water. I also read that in many places, 99% isopropyl alcohol is the way to go. I had some since I do a lot of basic electrical work and sometimes have to solder boards. And after trying it, then yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. 99% ISO is the way. I went with the Vaccine Labs brand, and you can purchase it from Amazon in crazy hoarder level bulk amounts, which is exactly what you need if you have a large cleaning station and choose not to use water. But like everything else, this can quickly add a sizable increase to your investment into the realm of 3D printing. The main reason why I like using alcohol is that it evaporates quickly once you remove the clean miniature, saving me waiting time and manually drying if I'm printing in mass. If you choose to use water, I would at least use distilled water or filtered to reduce the impurities that may stain the resin. I live in Georgia where our soil has a high iron content and the city I'm in does not clean its water to levels fit for consumption, and in my opinion, painting or cleaning fine detailed miniatures. You can also use the same alcohol for a quick wiping down periodically. Let's look at some miscellaneous tools that you may need. The Mighty 8K came with a pair of gloves and a couple of cleaning putty knives, but ultimately I went and had to buy a massive nitrate gloves. I also needed a chemical strainer so I could periodically strain the resin left over in the vat in order to remove any small bits of cured resin left over. Leaving these small bits floating around can lead to malformed or failed prints. I also started to use old metal baking pans to transfer new prints off the plate into the washing station. After having to clean these pans repeatedly, I started to cover them in transparent saran wrap, which I could tear off and dispose of easily, saving me time on the cleanup. This became its own chore, so I started wrapping them in small transparent trash bags instead, which I could easily remove and dispose of. For disposal, I bought a cheap plastic trash can with a step to open the lid, as well as a ton of transparent trash bags for that as well. When the small trash bag is full, I tie it closed and hang it outside in the sun for a few days. Since all the bags are transparent, the UV rays will harden any of the resin inside, so it can be disposed of safely. Do not just put uncured resin in the trash and send it to the dump. You will kill everything. Now let's talk about a working space. I didn't really research how big the printer and cure station would be other than how big the printing area was to determine how much I can print at one time. I thought a little portable toolbox would be enough, and technically it was for both the printer and curing station. But that left me with nowhere to work or to pull the miniatures off the plate with. I ended up having to build a workbench, and after throwing a portable airbrush booth on it, it's too small yet again. I also built the ventilation box around the printing station and threw a dehumidifier in there since I live in Georgia and the humidity can get astronomical. This ended up adding another $150 for me as printing in the house is not advised as the resin fumes can be toxic, especially to small children and animals. Lighting. I had to invest in bright lights so I can do the cleanup of print lines and sanding support remnants. While this was not expensive, it was something else I did not think of when making the move into this hobby. I also had to pick up a power strip with enough slots for the workstation, the lights, the airbrush booth, etc. Storage. I dumped out 80 plus miniatures and several large busts without thought to where I'm going to store these so they don't get covered in dust while waiting to be painted. Let alone where am I going to store these once they are painted. And most costly to me is my time. 3D printing is slow, and I don't mean just waiting 18 hours for a large print job to finish. Before buying the printer, I had stocked up on a ton of free files so I could at least justify to myself, okay, I got several hundred things to print that cost me nothing. Then I got the printer and learned that many of these free files are not ready to print. You'll need to create supports for many of them. Some you may have to go further and use special software to separate the miniature into smaller pieces in order to print it better. That's more time you'll need to invest into learning how to split these models into smaller printable pieces while trying to keep from creating bad join lines that you'll have to fill and sand later. This isn't taking into account any of the bad prints from poor supports that will ultimately happen. When prepping a mass print job, I may spend 1 to 2 hours building out supports and tilting the model back and forth to try and get the supports in areas of least attention. Also, my first print jobs failed because I did not take the time to play with the print settings, which are very important and that I'll cover in a later video. But as a general summary, your exposure settings, or how long the UV light is being applied to in the first slice, and then the UV exposure to all the slices after, may need to be altered, depending on the temperature and humidity of where you are. I've also mentioned that cleaning the miniature may take some of your time, but so does cleaning up the printer itself, which needs to be done periodically. Although it's not that much of a chore to accomplish, and I'll have a video on general maintenance coming in the future as well. If you are new to miniature painting, I would say hold off on going down the 3D printing route until you know you're in it for the long haul. If you're a veteran, or at least have been painting miniatures for a few years, then it may be worth the effort and cost. If you're considering coming in at an equivalent of the Mighty 8K with a curing station and using 8K resin and isopropyl alcohol for cleaning, expect at least $1,000 plus investment right from the start. If you average 5 miniatures, even a box of Space Marines from 40K Warhammer, that would be about $400 if you bought 80 miniatures, which is also the equivalent of about $40 in resin if printed with few failures and assuming that all printed models were free. And then $250 in resin and alcohol is also equivalent to about 240 free miniatures. If you add $1,000 for a decent 3D printer and curing station, you'll start to break even at those numbers, assuming you have a proper work area and accessories already at hand. If you purchased files, this can quickly skew this estimate, meaning you would have to print many more models for you to just break even. Now, you could also sell some prints, just be sure you're adhering to the rights of these prints. Some, mostly pay files, the creator sells you the rights to print and sell their models. You just can't sell the files that you use to print the models with. See Cinderwing 3D on Patreon as an example. But that can turn into other issues if you sell online or make more than X amount. Do your tax and private business research. You don't want the IRS coming down on you for making too much without a small business license, or for not paying your taxes for what they may determine to be an income source. I'm old now, and I know a couple folks who get decimated by not paying their taxes. In summation, 3D printing is a lot of work. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot that can go wrong. Conversely, there's a lot you can do with it, and most importantly, it's fun, and pulling the plate off with a clean print is extremely rewarding. So the question is, should you 3D print or should you not 3D print? To 3D print. You have the room and large amount of spare money that you're not going to miss. You have hours to dedicate to prepping prints, letting it print uninterrupted, not to mention the additional time of having to clean up the models after printing, as well as cleaning the printer itself. You are prepared to deal with the toxic fumes of working with resin, a filament printer. You are prepared to properly cure and dispose of the trash resin or bad prints. To not 3D print with resin. Do you have all the paints and brushes and sprue cutters or sanding sticks, palettes, etc. that you're going to need? If not, those should take priority over 3D printing. You have other financial situations that are a priority. You're new to the hobby or you're in a constantly stop-start state. Don't buy an expensive paperweight that's just going to collect dust. You cannot invest 2 to 6 hours per print project. Now this is before preparing the models for painting or even painting them. You're not willing to learn slicing programs and a 3D modeling software for splitting large models into smaller and more manageable pieces for printing. I hope you learned something and that I've helped you to determine if 3D printing is or is not for you. If it is, take a gander at the description of this video as I have listed several resources for you to stockpile a collection of files while you wait for your printer to arrive. May I also recommend you create some folder structures ahead of time to organize your different files, keeping things like pre-supported files separate from your unsupported ones, and to keep the large busts away from the small game miniatures. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and if you like the content of this video and would like to see more, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I bid you a fond farewell. Till the next video.